Hello friends, and welcome to this week's Bible study. This is probably our last session in the book of Daniel, and it is our 16th part, and today we hope to finish off chapter 11 and chapter 12. Now the previous verses we've read in chapter 11 accurately foretold the conflict between the Ptolemaic Empire and the Seleucid Empire, and the effect that this conflict had upon the Jews. Daniel received the vision in about 536 BC, which is 371 years before the cleansing of the temple, which we looked at last time. Now the remaining verses in this chapter do not align to any events or characters which are known in history. Where the prophetic word shifts its focus in time is unclear. Some commentators believe that verse 36 onwards is yet to be fulfilled, while others believe it's verse 40 onwards. The difficulty interpreting this chapter is knowing where the gap of 2,000 plus years between the historic events and the future events actually occurs. The phrase in verse 35, until the time of the end, is thought to indicate that change. Daniel now describes a king who shall regard neither the God of his fathers. This could be said of Antiochus IV, since he did not honour the Greek gods. Commentators generally regard the rest of the chapter 11 that is, as predicting events concerning the reign of the king depicted by the little horn in Daniel's vision of the four beasts, which is Daniel chapter 7. This character is believed to be the Antichrist of the last days, the beast of Revelation. The following verses are difficult to interpret with any confidence. Presumably they will make a lot more sense to the generation who lived through the events. Daniel 11:36-45. Then the king shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god. Shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, shall prosper until the wrath has been accomplished, for what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall exalt himself above all. But in their place he shall honour a God of fortresses, a God which his fathers did not know. He shall honour with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge, and advance its glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and divide the land for gain. There have been many people throughout history who have been possessed by the Antichrist spirit, and perhaps there have been attempts by Satan to bring the man of sin in before God's appointed time. But when the Antichrist appears, he'll be worse than all of these predecessors. The Antichrist spirit always seeks to cast truth to the ground and to cause the worship of the true God to cease. This section describes a king who will arise at the appointed time of indignation. He exalts himself against all that is called God and denies the God of his fathers. Instead, he exalts himself above all gods. Paul explains this to the church at Thessalonica in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 3-4. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God and is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple, showing himself that he is God. Much that Antiochus IV did in terms of persecuting God's people and profaning the temple with false images is repeated by this man of sin. This profaning of the temple is believed to be what Jesus referred to in Matthew 24. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. Many Bible translations use the phrase the God of gods and the God of his fathers. The inference is that this refers to the true God. If the God of Israel was the Antichrist's father's God, then this fierce king would be of Jewish or Christian descent. However, the God of his father, small g, is equally valid translation, and that is used in the New International Version. This king's refusal to regard any God suggests that he is an atheist. Verse 37 also says that this king will not regard the desire of women. And commentators speculated whether this is Tammuz Adonais, the Babylonian fertility god, much favoured by women in the ancient world. And it's mentioned actually in Ezekiel 8:14. It has been claimed by some that the cult of Tammuz was the origin of the worship of Madonna and Child. Perhaps the cult of Mary would be a modern fulfillment of this verse. The Hebrew phrase in verse 37 can equally be translated as the love of women, which would give this sentence a totally different meaning. Having said that this king raises himself up above all that is called God, verse 38 appears to contradict that by saying he will honour the God of fortresses. Commentators have suggested therefore that the Antichrist will honour military might. Other Bible translations give a clearer version of verse 39 and tell how through military might and political intrigue he will strengthen and increase his rule. And this is the New American Standard Bible. He shall take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will give great honour to those who acknowledge him and will cause them to rule over many and will parcel out the land for a price. Let's return to reading Daniel verses 40 to 45. At the time of the end, the king of the south will attack him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape from his hand: Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Also the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. But news from the east and the north will trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to an end, and no one will help him. So this king will not go totally unopposed in the world. Using terminology that previously applied to Ptolemaic and Seleucid empires, the vision now describes a war that will ultimately affect the glorious land of Israel. Today, a war between Syria and Egypt appears unlikely and will probably not threaten Israel's military strength, but the kingdoms of the north and south may refer to other superpowers. There have been speculation about the identity of the kingdom of the north for centuries. We saw in section 2.10 that there have been suggestions the Antichrist would rule over a European super-state or over a union of Islamic states. The king described earlier is now referred to as the king of the north. He is attacked by the king of the south, but responds like a whirlwind with a powerful military force. Numerous countries in the Middle East are affected by the conflict, although the area now known as Jordan appears to escape. It is while the king of the north is encamped between the seas, the Mediterranean and Dead Sea, and Jerusalem, that his end comes. The destruction of this little horn is believed to refer to the Battle of Armageddon. This section gives little detail of what happens, although the start of chapter 12 does give more information. The king of the north's forces are gathered to do great harm to the people of Israel. Perhaps like Antiochus IV, He is enraged by the Jews' refusal to worship the image that he sets up. This king is destroyed by the second coming of Jesus. Zechariah 14 verse 3 says, "Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle." And Revelation 19 verses 19 to 21 reads, "And I saw the beast, the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him," that's the Christ, "who sat on the horse, and against the army. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet, who works signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. And the rest were killed with the sword that proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh." So that's the end of chapter 12, and indeed end of chapter 11. Chapter 12 flows on straight from there, and we'll read verse 1. "At that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people will be delivered, everyone who's found in the book." This section starts with the phrase "at the time," linking it to the events in the final verses of chapter 11, the activity of the king of the north in the glorious land. This is the time when the worst trouble known in history befalls the Jewish people. Jesus uses a similar phrase to that in Daniel in chapter 24 verses 21 to 22. "And then there shall be great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor ever shall be. And unless those days have been shortened, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened." The time of great tribulation is the final part of the last 7 years in Daniel's weeks of visions. Michael, the great angelic prince who watches over Israel, arises to protect Israel. The description of Michael standing up appears to correspond to events described in Revelation chapter 12. Verses 7 to 9 read, "And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. But they did not prevail, nor was there a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called Devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." And this event causes the spirit of prophecy in Revelation to say, Revelation 12 verse 12, "Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time." The arising of Michael brings deliverance to the elect Jews, everyone who is found written in the book. These are the elect Jesus spoke about in Matthew chapter 24. Perhaps these are the 144,000 sealed saints described in Revelation chapters 7 and 14. The book mentioned is called the Book of Life in the New Testament. God knows who are his people, and he is able to deliver everyone. This is a great guarantee of God's faithfulness and saving ability. In a time of great spiritual darkness, when there is political and social trouble, such as never been before, God is able to keep each one of his children. The promise is particularly for the Jews, who are Daniel's people. We recognize that for New Testament saints, God's keeping does not automatically promise deliverance from persecution or even death. Let's move on. Daniel chapter 12 verses 2 to 3. "And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. The fact that these verses describe the resurrection of the dead confirms that this section condenses major events in the last days. Those raised to everlasting life are partakers of the first resurrection. Those raised to shame and everlasting contempt are partakers of the second resurrection. Jesus said, "Do not marvel at this, for the hour is coming in which all those who are in the graves will hear his voice and come forth. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of condemnation." That's John 5:28 and 29. Fittingly, the revelation given to Daniel ends with encouragement to the saints of God. Those who are wise and turn others to righteousness shall shine with brightness as the stars forever and ever. Now we come to read about the sealed book. Verse 4. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So Daniel is instructed to roll up the scroll and seal the book until the time of the end. In the Middle East, at that time, documents were sealed either to keep their contents concealed or to authenticate the scroll with the authors and witnesses' seals. The scroll in the book of Revelation, chapter 5, was sealed to hide the contents until the appointed time. In verse 9 of this chapter we read, "The words are closed up and sealed until the end of the time of the end." The sealing of the prophecy means that its meaning is hidden from people's understanding until the appointed time. Now, all prophecy is a mystery which can only be understood by divine revelation. It has been only within the last 200 years that Daniel's 70 weeks vision has been understood in the terms that we have described previously in this study. Daniel is told that many will run to and fro and knowledge will increase. The Hebrew phrase and the context of this verse suggests that the running back and forth is an eagerness to obtain understanding about Daniel's prophecy. And the NIV translates it this way: "But you, Daniel, close up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge." The traditional and less scholarly interpretation of these verses was that world travel and an increase in knowledge were signs of the end of the times. Now we look at indeed a description of the 3.5 year period. Daniel 12, 5 to 7. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this river bank and the other on that river bank. And one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, "How long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be?" Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he had held up his right hand and his left to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. The one, like unto the Son of Man, now stands above the water of the river, and is joined by two angels, one on each river bank. One of the angels asks how long, to which the answer, time, times, and half a time, is given. This is the last 3.5 years of this 70th week spoke about in Daniel chapter 9, verse 7. The end of this time will coincide with the power of the holy people, that is Israel, being completely shattered. Israel will stand alone against the forces of the Antichrist in the battle of Armageddon, and will apparently be defeated. But at the moment of the defeat, the end will come. This is foretold by the prophet Zechariah 14, verses 1 to 6. Behold, the day of the Lord is coming, and your spoil will be divided in your midst. And I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the houses rifled, and the women ravished. Half the city shall go into captivity, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle. And in that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east, making a very large valley. Half of the mountain shall move towards the north, and half of it towards the south. Then you shall flee through my mountain valley, for the mountain valley shall reach Azel. Yes, you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Thus the Lord my God will come, and all the saints with you. Daniel now continues at verse 8 till 10. Although I heard, I did not understand. Then I said, My Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So like the parable of the wheat and tares, the heavenly visitor foretells of the coexistence of those who are being purified and those who do wickedly. Wisdom belongs to the wise, and the wise are those who fear the Lord. An application for us today is to walk in the fear of the Lord and allow the Lord to purify our hearts. To continue to walk in sin and uncleanness is folly and could end with eternal regret. Daniel chapter 12 verses 11 to 12. And from that time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, the abomination of desolation is set up. There shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. The 1,290 days is 3.5 years, and with 360 days in each year, plus 30 days. The addition of another 45 days makes the 1,335 days. It's not clear if these verses refer to when Antiochus IV set up the abomination of the desolation, or when the Antichrist of the New Testament sets up the second abomination of desolation. The figures certainly apply to the time of Antiochus IV. Judas Maccabeus restored worship 1,290 days after Antiochus Epiphanes set up the abomination of desolation, and 55 days later Antiochus Epiphanes died. Could it be that history will be repeated and that the Antichrist will be destroyed 1,335 days after he defiles the temple? Daniel 13 reads, But you go your way till the end, for you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of the days. So the final word in the book of Daniel, that he is to rest in death until the resurrection at the last of the days, when he'll enjoy his reward. So that brings us to the end of our study of this great prophetic book. Now this book of Daniel has shown us that in judging his wayward people, God remembered to show mercy. It shows us that God is sovereign over all the affairs of men, even the godless heathen. It shows that the times and seasons of the nation are in God's hands, and that God is able to deliver his people from the most impossible situations, such as the fiery furnace and the lion's den. The future is as plain to God as the past. We learn that prayer is the most powerful and most necessary discipline for the servant of God. Our praying is opposed by spiritual wicked forces. We learn that integrity of character and purpose are necessary for the servants of God. And following God is rarely the easiest option and will bring conflict, persecution, but is always the best option. Like David, Daniel outlived all his enemies and then received a heavenly reward. Amen. I trust that this study has blessed you and encouraged you, and I'd encourage you to download the PDF version that I've been looking at so that you can read through it again and probably make them a lot more sense. The Lord bless you and keep you and make you to stand fearlessly like Daniel of old. In Jesus' name, amen.